right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power, and the prejudging for the 2025 Pro Muscle Italy just wrapped up, and we've got a lot to talk about here. So this is the first call out here. Very chaotic first call out. We're not going to talk about it too much because, you know, at various portions during this first call out, you can't even see the guys on the outside. They're kind of cut off and like out of the frame of the camera. I believe this would have been an 8-man call out. It's got pretty much everybody that we talked about going into the show. Theo LaGuerrier, Matthias Hallwick, Lewis Breed, Emir Omaragic, Quint Beastwood, Ers Kalisinski, Sergio Oliva Jr., Mark Hector. A very deep call out, but like I said, it was very congested. There was, not really a whole lot of space on stage. They were kind of shoving each other for posing space. So this first call out, it was kind of all over the place. I think the big takeaway, though, is Ers Kalisinski. Everybody was waiting to see how Ers would look, and Ers looks incredible. Peeled to the bone. He doesn't look small next to any of these guys. I think you could argue that Ers might be in the best condition of anybody in this call out. But they were really moving these guys all over. So I want to focus on the final call-out where they narrow it down to 6 guys. This would be your top 6. And I think you have a better view of everybody in this call-out than the first call-out did. So I think this is a better call-out to talk about here. And this call-out was just as strange to me. They moved these guys all over. Everybody took a turn in the center of this call-out. And they moved, by the end of this call-out, you had Quint Beastwood standing on the outside. And he started out in the middle. So initially, the vibe that I got from all of these call-outs was that it was going to be between Ers and Quint Beastwood. That seemed to be the 2 guys that they kept in the middle the longest. And of this final call-out, it seemed like they kept Ers in the middle the longest and started comparing guys around Ers. Like I said, Quint Beastwood was in the middle, then eventually was moved completely to the outside of this 6-man call-out, and they even ended this call-out with Matthias Hallwick and Lewis Breed in the center, who had not been in the center the entire time. And I thought it was interesting that the head judge ended this call-out by saying it's wide open. So I feel like that means they don't have a clear winner at this point. So this call-out starts out with Ers and Quinton in the center. And then they go to Mark and Quinton in the center. So they move Ers outside of the center. They move Mark Hector in. Mark Hector looked incredible here, by the way. We talked about him a lot here building up into this show. I feel like he's probably going to be top 3. But again, I'm not really sure what they're doing. So like I said, they started out with Quinton and Ers in the center. Then it was Mark and Quinton in the center. Then they went back to Quinton and Ers in the center. And then they moved Quinton out of the center. So then it was Sergio and Ers in the center. Then going from Sergio and Ers to the center, they then moved, so they did the full 8 poses with them. Then they moved Matthias and Lewis Breed into the center. So kind of all over the place. Like I said, I mean, pretty much everybody took a turn in the center of this 6-man call-out. So I have to look at it as who spent the most time in the center. And as I rewatch this, it looks like that was Ers. And so Ers, I think Ers is going to be the story of this weekend. If Ers ends up winning this show, which to me, it kind of looks like he is based on the way these call-outs went. He was really impressive. I mean, honestly, of all these guys from that first call-out, his conditioning was what caught my eye the most. And of course, you've got Ers's classic shape that he's bringing to the open division. But I think the surprising thing about Ers was he looked a lot bigger than I expected him to look here. I mean, hats off to him. And I think this really does go to show that maybe the classic physique weight limit really was holding Ers back from bringing his best possible physique, because we're talking about 35 pounds, 30 pounds heavier than he was in classic physique here, and he is absolutely peeled to the bone. This is all muscle. When we're talking about 30 pounds over where he was in classic, this is legit 30 pounds of muscle. Ers is peeled. Look at his glutes. Look at his hamstrings. Striated, crisp, grainy. I would say the only weak point, the real weak point for Ers here that really stands out to me is the width of his back. And he's also got very high inserted lats. And I don't feel like he has the width in some of those back shots. And then the density in the mid to lower lats to be as competitive with some of the open guys. I feel like he still has some building to do on his back to be more competitive with these guys. But man, I gotta say, every other shot, front lat spread looks fantastic. His most muscular look fantastic. Side tricep, side chest, front double bicep. Maybe you could argue his arms still need to come up a little bit for open like they did in Classic. But I mean, pose for pose, you could make a strong argument for Ers taking, at least 5 of the 8 poses. He's just in such gnarly condition. He's big, he's full. I feel like he just really nailed it here. He looks good as an open bodybuilder. He really does. And like I said, man, I'm shocked by how big he looks in this lineup. Now, with Quentin, it's hard to say. It kind of seemed like maybe Quentin was in the lead when Prejudging started out. It kind of seemed like it was between Ers and Quentin when Prejudging started out. But then on the other hand, they moved Quentin all the way to the outside by the end of this final call-out of Prejudging. And to me, his lower body looked great. His glutes and hamstrings were as tight as they've ever been. Quads were super separated. The upper body started to look a little bit soft to me as Prejudging went on. It's just the conditioning in the upper body doesn't seem to match his lower body here. And then when they moved Quentin out and moved Sergio in next to Ers, the interesting thing about that, like that comparison, when you're in the center, that's typically comparing for top 2 in a first and last call out. But then in the very first call out, they had Sergio basically on the outside and they kept moving him out. But then in this last call out, they moved him to the center next to Ers, which would presume that they have him in a top 2 position. And I thought this was a really good version of Sergio, by the way. I thought much better than Fibo, much sharper than Fibo. I'm just not 100% sure where they're going with all this. This is one of the most interchangeable final callouts that I've ever seen. Like I said, they moved everybody in the center. The top 2 was different like 5 times in this callout. And I thought Theo LaGuerrier would be in this mix, but he was in the first callout. He got moved to the second callout, so he wasn't in this final 6. I think he was just too soft in the lower body. I think he was a little bit off here because I really thought he was going to be one of the front runners, but he ended up in the second call out, moved from that first call out. So he looks like he's looking at more like a 7th to 10th place spot or something like that. So I'm kind of torn here. Like I said, the judge at the very end of Prejudging said it's wide open, gentlemen, which sounds to me like they don't have a clear winner, and a lot of these placings must be very close, judging by the way this call out went. So I'm kind of torn between, I really want to see Quentin win a show and qualify for the Olympia. So I've been rooting for Quentin going into this show. He looked good here, but like I said, I feel like his upper body just looked kind of soft compared to his lower body. He still didn't have like that evenly distributed condition. And then on the other hand, I feel like the most exciting outcome for this show would be Ers Kalisinski winning his open debut and qualifying for the Open Olympia 2025. And Ers was conditioned all over, hard as nails, grainy, detailed, maybe some weak poses, those back poses maybe. But I feel like for his open debut, he really did nail it here. So if I had to pick who I want to win, I think I would have to go with Ers on this one. I think, they kept him in the center. It seemed like the longest out of anybody. And I feel like my eyes were just drawn to him more. He brought that classic, like aesthetically pleasing shape to open, and he brought the size. He delivered on the size. He doesn't look undersized. He doesn't look small. He looks like he belongs up there with the open guys. Like I said, arguably most conditioned guy in that call out. Aesthetic, conditioned, big. I feel like Ers kind of deserves it here. So I think that's going to be my pick to win. I think that's the most exciting outcome. I feel like he deserves it. But I don't know. This was one of the weirdest final callouts I think I've ever seen. I don't think at this point the judges know for sure who's winning this show. And I'm very, very curious to see what you guys have to say in the comments below, who you guys have winning the show. Because I think at this point, I think it's very open-ended. I mean, the head judge even said it himself. It's really hard to say. I think I would honestly go with Ers, and I'm shocked that I'm saying that. He was a wild card going into this show, but I think he really delivered here. I really do. You've got a really good balance with him. You've got hard as nails condition. You've got aesthetically pleasing shape. He brought serious muscle to this show. He brought open bodybuilder size. I think he checked all the boxes for me here. This was probably about as good as his open debut could have possibly gone, because this lineup was solid, solid, solid. And even as far as the other placings, man, it's hard to say. Like, I don't know who they have in second right now, because they've basically given everybody a shot at that second place spot, and they didn't really leave it very clear. I really liked how Mark looked. I thought he was definitely more conditioned than Quentin overall. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark wound up in second and Quentin in third. Sergio looked good too, but man, it's hard to say. Like, I go back to the very first call out where they moved Sergio basically to the outside of, 8 guys. So I think the only pick that I'm going to make is the pick that I think is the most exciting, and that would be Ers Kalisinski winning. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. How is this thing going to go? Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power, my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.